JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the president for trying to bring an end to this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine that you say what problems we have?
I have been to.
Come once.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people into your military? And do you think that it's respectful to come to the Oval Office of the United States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country?
A lot of questions. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
First of all, during the war, everybody has problems, even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless. God bless. You will not have a war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that.
That's
Remember
exactly
this. You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very good.
You will feel influence.
We're going to feel very good and very strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards.
Playing cards.
Right now, you don't. You're playing cards. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country. That's back to you. Far more than a lot of people said they should have.
Have you said thank you once? This entire meeting? No, in this entire meeting, have you said thank you? You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States of America and the president who's trying to save your country.
Please, you think that if you will speak very loudly about the war, you can...
He's not speaking loudly. He's not speaking loudly. Your country's in big trouble.
Can I
Wait a minute. No. You've done a lot of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not winning. You're not winning this. You have a damn good chance of coming out okay because of us.
Mr. President, we are staying in our country, staying strong from the very beginning of the war. We've been alone, and we are thankful. I said thanks
you haven't
in
been
this
alone.
cabinet,
you
and
haven't
not
been
only
alone.
in this cabinet.
We gave you, through this stupid president, $350 billion.
You voted
we gave
for
you
your
military
president.
equipment,
You
and your
voted
men
for
are
your
brave,
president.
but they had to use our military.
What about
If you didn't have our military equipment,
if you
didn't have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
In 3 days, I heard it from Putin. In 3 days, this is something
maybe
new.
Less.
In 2 weeks, of course, yes.
It's going to be a very hard thing to do business like this. I tell you.
Okay, so then here's Zelenskyy getting kicked out. He got escorted out. They were supposed to do a press conference, and they decided not to do the press conference. They instead escorted the man out of there. And then Trump issued this statement. We had a very meaningful meeting in the White House today. Much was learned that could never be understood without conversation under such fire and pressure. It's amazing what comes out through emotion, and I have determined that President Zelenskyy is not ready for peace if America is involved, because he feels our involvement gives him a big advantage in negotiations. I don't want advantage. I want peace. He disrespected the United States of America in its cherished Oval Office. He can come back when he's ready for peace. Okay. Also, this kind of happened. Well, this did happen right when Zelenskyy was first greeted at the White House. Listen to this.
Pretty close. How are you? Pretty shut.
He's all dressed up today.
Slam. He's all dressed up. We all know he wears the same thing.
Thank you very much.
Okay. So, he's pointing out the fact that Zelenskyy shows up in his same uniform, and he has for years. He's never dressed up in a suit. And then this happened also in the Oval Office. Zelenskyy gets humiliated even further. Watch this.
Second question.
My second question for President Zelenskyy. No. Why don't you wear a suit? Why don't you wear a suit? You're at the highest level in this country's office and you refuse to wear a suit, just want to see if do you own a suit?
Yeah, you have problems.
A lot of Americans have problems with you not
Really?
respecting
I don't
the
have
dignity of
such.
this office.
I will wear a costume after this war will finish.
Okay.
Yes, maybe one.
Maybe something like this.
something like
Yes,
yours.
sir.
Yes.
That'd be great.
Maybe something better. I don't know. We will see. Maybe something cheaper than yeah. Thank you. Thank you for.
Joining us now is retired Lieutenant Colonel Karen Katowski, a former U.S. Air Force officer who served as a Pentagon desk officer and worked with the NSA. She's best known for exposing political corruption and military intelligence leading up to the 2003 Iraq War and has been a relentless critic of U.S. foreign policy ever since. She's authored multiple books on military operations, contributed to the American Conservative and LewRockwell.com, and was featured in the documentary Why We Fight. Lieutenant Colonel Karen Katowski, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, let's get your reaction to this first. Let's start off with this latest one, the suit question. I mean, look, they were all saying that Zelenskyy was disrespectful, but I kind of feel like this was a bit disrespectful to ask him that. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, they're attacking him because he's weak. We know why he doesn't wear a suit. He's explained this before. He's supposed to be a wartime leader of Ukraine, and it's part of his shtick, really, in running his country in a time of war against the terrible, evil Russians. And so we know why he doesn't wear a suit. The fact that they picked on him for it, the wolves are surrounding him. I mean, he has no power, and when you don't have power, that's how you get treated. It's interesting that the media jumped on it because they know, the media knows why he doesn't wear a suit. They're adding to it. They're putting him in a box. He's already in a box, but now he's publicly been really humiliated, I think.
Yeah.
And it sends a message to Europe. It sends a message to his backers in Ukraine, which are a dwindling number. I'm talking about the aggressively anti-Russian, to some extent, neo-Nazi type, uber patriotic Ukrainians who are still, supporting Zelenskyy. He is sending them a message that he is not intimidated. He is not impressed.
Yeah, let's talk about the heated exchange between Zelenskyy, Trump, and Vance. I could have done without the dressing down of Zelenskyy about his outfit, I guess. I mean, it's been a shtick, and we all know it's a shtick, and he shows up everywhere in that outfit. I just don't know if it's appropriate for him to be kind of ridiculed inside of the Oval Office or ridiculed, by Trump when he showed up and saying, well, look, dressed up today, didn't you? I mean, you knew he was going to show up looking like that. He's been showing up like that for a couple of years. And I would rather we just stick to the meat of the issue, which is what's the issue with this war and continuing the war and Zelensky's point of view on this. I mean, I feel for the guy. This is, he was essentially talked into this war very aggressively by the West, by the United States, and by Europe. He's lost lives. I mean, Ukrainians are dead. Americans aren't dead. Ukrainians are dead. And now a new administration comes in and tells him, you're disrespectful. And what do you think of it? What do you think of the exchange?
Well, okay, 3 years of war, slightly over 3 years of war, instigated by NATO, by NATO extension, funded by the West, funded by the United States. Very corrupt. Ukraine was corrupt before. Ukraine has not used even the stuff that the West gave him, although we gave him all the old junk that didn't work together. The whole thing was a game to kill Ukrainians and to threaten Russia and to kill Russians, I guess, too. But he has lost not just territory, but Zelenskyy has lost people. The people who have emigrated, the refugees and immigrants in Europe and Canada and the United States, they're not coming back. They're not coming back to rebuild Ukraine. The Russian part of Ukraine, which is now those four territories
Oblasts,
that are now, they are Russian. They are Russian people. They speak Russian. There was a civil war going on since before 2014. The Minsk agreements were intended to stop that civil war, and they didn't honor them. the West lied about him. There's so many ugly aspects of this, and Zelensky has lost people. He's lost the faith of those that remain. He can't recruit soldiers. That was interesting that JD brought up the difficulty in, they pick people up off the streets. They're putting young kids with no training, old men with no training into the meat grinder. This is on Zelensky, and everyone knows it, but no one's talked about it under Biden. So I think nothing they said was not true, but it was shocking because we have ignored this. Under the Biden administration, the neocon approach was to build up Ukraine. Ukraine is a patriotic, defensive war against an evil, expansionist enemy. Ukraine has done nothing wrong. They're entirely innocent. And so watching this, it is uncomfortable to watch the way Trump and JD are, in a sense, really bullying Zelensky. But it wouldn't be shocking. We shouldn't be here. We shouldn't be at this point right now. They had 2 years ago, and the Russians say this, we say this, the history books say this. They were an hour away from a peace agreement in Turkey 2 years ago. And what happened? We know what happened. The West came in. Boris Johnson came in. Phone calls were made from the United States. Don't sign this agreement, Zelensky, or you're done for. So he walks away from a peace agreement. And since that time, that's when they lost the territory. That's when they have lost their people, torn up their soldiers, and polluted we talk about Ukraine as the breadbasket. Well, it's covered in cluster bombs now that we sent. We sent the cluster bombs. How do you pick those up? The mines. How do we clean that up? It's basically turned into a third world war zone. We did it. I say we did it. The Biden administration did it. The neocons did it. NATO did it. And it really is. We should feel sorry to some extent for Zelensky. He has never been up for the job that they asked for him. What we wanted him to do was be our puppet. He's good at being a puppet. He shouldn't be humiliated today because he is who he is. Right. But anyway, we created this problem. And I think, yes, it'd be nice to have thank yous, but also Trump should say, we understand we put you in this situation. The previous administration, instead of blaming them, kind of own it a little bit, because the American military industrial complex wanted to send those weapons over there. They wanted those contracts.
That's, I think, my beef with this exchange. I mean, a big part of me liked this and seeing this, right? Because for one, I'm so sick of just the polished politics, and it's all just a dog and pony show, and we're never getting the real deal. And what I love about Trump is that we finally get, he just says whatever, and JD Vance too. And it's like, this is refreshing because this is more real life. So I liked the exchange for that reason. I also like that they basically have had it with Zelensky, right? I mean, Trump has basically said for months now, and even while he was running, I want peace in Ukraine. We've got to come to a deal. We have to end it. And now Zelensky comes in and is saying, I don't want to end it. I want to keep fighting, and you owe me. You should. And I don't think he's wrong in the you owe me attitude. And that's where then when he gets kind of berated and humiliated in front of everybody, that's where my beef is, because I'm with you. I think that Trump should at least acknowledge the U.S.'s role in this. Now, he doesn't have to take responsibility because he wasn't president during that time, but he certainly can. But he was president, from 2016 to 2020, and I don't think he point blank, I mean, I could be wrong. Did he ever come out and say Ukraine will not be a member of NATO?
No, he didn't. He didn't say that, and he really honestly didn't pay much attention to it. And I don't think Trump, foreign policy has never been Trump's main interest area. He is America first, whatever that means. That is where his heart is. So foreign policy isn't necessarily his big interest area. And I don't think he knew much about Ukraine. And the JD Vance, of course, is a totally different person, has different friends, connects to information from around the world. He knows what's going on. And he was very articulate with explaining that. What is happening, though, is to some extent, Trump, we're going to continue, the U.S. is going to continue to talk to Russia. They're going to resolve this thing. Russia cannot, and they've stated this multiple times, and it makes sense. They cannot sign a peace agreement with a guy who is out the door. And Zelensky is not even, he has declared martial law. He's the president. They're not having parliamentary elections in Ukraine until the war is over. The problem is the war is over when you sign a contract or you sign an agreement or something. And, there's a something has to shift here, because Russia is not going to agree, not going to trust Zelensky. They might trust Trump. Trump wants this over. I think Trump is honestly, he has not wavered from, I want this over. I want peace. I want the killing to stop, etc. Trump has been clear. But who will sign for Ukraine? They have an old and largely dysfunctional parliament elected 4 or 5 years ago. Same with Zelensky. Zelensky is corrupt. He's weak. He is seized with emotion, and Trump was right about that. He hates Putin. In fact, he has not even retracted his statement from several years ago that I will never deal with Putin. I will never talk with Putin. Until Putin leaves Russia, I will not do a. He has said that. He has not retracted that. So part of this is on Zelensky, but of course Zelensky is not at. He has no power. His situation is he needs to find a place to go, not in Ukraine, and in a place that will be safe for him and his family. He has several homes in several places. I think Florida. There's others. He
Italy,
needs to
I
do
think.
that. And I think this humiliation exercise today is in part trying to clearly let him know he is not part of the solution. That's what they're telling him. And Trump doesn't just, Trump has things that he blurts out. He's very, in some ways, unpredictable. But in this case, I think this is part of a strategy. And I think having J.D. Vance in the room was also part of it. Vance has been very clear about NATO being a big part of the problem. So they have a plan. And I think we just saw what that plan was. Zelensky is done for. He is not going to be the person who signs anything relating to how they're going to end this war.
It's just a really crappy situation. I've been against this war from the very beginning and felt like they need to negotiate this out. There's just no way that you're going to win against Russia, and they haven't. But I can't help but to feel a little bad for the guy and Ukraine, especially the Ukrainian people. I mean, now it's all for nothing, really. The West marched them into this, and it's all for nothing now. I mean, all those bodies, all those dead Ukrainians, the land is gone, the Ukrainians are gone. And now, I mean, from Zelensky's perspective, he's looking at this and he's saying, you assholes marched me into the, I wanted to sign an agreement. You guys came in and told me not to.
Yeah.
No, basically swearing up and down. Yeah, that's what he should be saying.
And he did not say that because he did not want the agreement. He felt, I'm sure Zelensky, I'm pretty positive Zelensky, when Boris Johnson said, don't do this, Zelensky was more than willing to say, okay, fine, I'm not going to.
Okay. Yeah.
But Zelensky supposedly was told, and if he wasn't told, he should have known it because it's common knowledge around the world. It's a famous quote from somebody, and I don't know if it's Kissinger, but somebody who said, the only thing worse than being an enemy of the United States is to be an ally.
Yeah,
that's
right.
Kind of the
Kissinger.
thing. So, and I don't know if it was him, but the idea being that when we go to war with our allies, we generally, historically, the United States is fundamentally about power politics. And when we have the power, we exercise the power. Just as we saw last week with the abuse of NATO, the abuse of the EU. We have the power to do that. The EU has destroyed its economy, in part due to their obsessive support of this war, which was, like you said, never destined to come out as a Ukrainian victory. There's no way in the world. I mean, they have 1/10 of the soldiers that's when they started. They had 1/10 of the soldiers that Russia could field. And so but again, it's when it's your country, I'm sure that you have tunnel vision. And also the people around Zelensky are frightening people. They are dangerous people. Zelensky he needs to save himself, I think, is what he needs to do. And since he hasn't done it so far, I think part of this was to let him know, you're not getting help from us and we're not dealing with you. So your best bet is, step down and have elections with whatever's left. And they'll, run the elections with the immigrant community in Europe. Let those Ukrainians vote for who they want in their parliament and who they want for president. And then something permanent can be signed to end the war. But Zelensky's not the guy. It's clear. And it is unfortunate. But again, everybody, like, we're adults. If you are running a country, let's say you're running Ukraine, you have a responsibility to know who you're getting in bed with. And anyone who would have gotten in bed with Victoria Nuland, the neoconservatives who have an awful track record, and Biden, who wasn't really competent, honestly, but he was surrounded by very aggressive anti-Russia neoconservatives. If you go to bed with those folks, this is what you've chosen. And if I can figure it out and you can figure it out and half the population on the planet can figure it out, Zelensky should have figured it out too. He should have seen this coming. I'm sorry. I don't have huge sympathy. It is unfortunate that he was treated badly in public, but he's having a hard time learning.
Right. Well, and that's why they had to, that's why they've humiliated him publicly, because he is having a hard time. They've told him over and over and over again, we want to end this war. We're done with it. And he's just saying, no, I'm not done. And you owe me, like I said, I understand his frustration. I also think he is power hungry, right? He's not having the elections. He understands that when the war's over, then he would have to have elections. He would no longer be president of Ukraine. He'd have to go somewhere else. Like I'm sure there's like a bunch of factors at play here, but I do feel like, the Trump administration is not willing to, he's president now, but he does, unfortunately, you inherit all of the bad mistakes that everybody previously made. And he's inherited this mistake, and and he's now the representative of the country. He has to say, look, we are bad. Like, we marched you into this. But now
Trump has the same problem as Zelensky has with Putin. Trump despises Biden, and he despises his political opponents of the past. And I get that, because he's been badly treated. But, part of being a statesman is you kind of have to put aside some of your emotions. And Trump doesn't do that, which is why people love him, which is why, he was elected. He expresses himself. But, we're at fault here. The United States government, the past government, has done this to Ukraine. And the bad thing is, we did it to Ukraine for a reason that was very casual. We wanted to weaken Russia. Why? It's like the 15th or 20th largest economy in the world. Other than nukes, their military is relatively small. It's a Russian Federation. It's not communist. American invest there, but we said we want to harm Russia. Why do we want to harm Russia? The neoconservatives despise Russia. They are afflicted with the same emotional passion and hatred for Russia that Zelensky expresses. And he's probably, if I was Zelensky, I would have got on the phone to Victoria Nuland right after this and commiserated for a little while, maybe got her advice. Mm-hmm. But I tell you, the administration has changed. He needs to save himself. He needs to save himself, because when you face not just the aid and the military assistance that's ending, and it already technically has ended from the United States, not just that, he has been publicly humiliated. You can't walk that back. He cannot go home and say, it was a good meeting with Trump. No, it wasn't. He's not respected. He's not a legitimate leader. This feeds the people in Ukraine that are sick of Zelensky. And trust me, we can feel sorry for Zelensky. As Americans, we're all safe. We're happy. It was politics. We didn't agree with it. The Ukrainians died because of him. Mm. They had their country destroyed. They're living in other countries, trying to make a living. They blame Zelensky for this and the people around him. So they won't have any sympathy for him. Yeah. It's
you bring up a really good point about he cannot, because of this public shaming, he can't go home and pretend like this didn't happen. He can't sweep it under the rug and say, well, behind closed doors, we had this meeting and it was all fine. And because part of me thinks, well, Trump, they didn't need to really attack him because we have all the power. So all they really needed to say to him was like, look, we're just not going to fund it anymore. So the war, you can't really continue this on without us. So I don't know what you're going to do. I mean, we have all the power in this situation. We just cut off the funding. That's it. That's all we have to do. Yeah. But instead, they decided to be very aggressive towards him. But I guess you bring up a great point. Then he can't go back home and pretend like, well, yeah, they said they weren't going to fund it anymore. But behind closed doors, they were more supportive. And like now he can't say that at all. I mean, now they know. So, from that perspective, maybe it was good that he just got completely humiliated in front of everybody so that he fully and completely understands this is not just, we're not just saying this to say it. You know, the United States is serious. We're not going to fund this anymore. And you're either with us on a peace deal or you're not. Unfortunately, the peace deal means you've lost. You've lost a bunch of people and you've lost territory.
He has lost. And the meeting they had in Saudi Arabia with our State Department guy, you know, Marco Rubio, and I don't know if Lavrov was there, but the Russian representatives, I think Lavrov was there. They communicated very clearly that there can be no treaty signed with a guy who is not the legitimately elected leader of Ukraine because he suspended elections. Now, did he have to suspend elections? You know, Biden administration supported that. And some countries fight wars and have elections, some don't. I mean, you can debate whether he needed to do that or not, but he did it. And he hasn't had elections in over a year, not intending to have any elections. If there's an election in Ukraine today, Zelenskyy will lose. He will be replaced by someone else. Russia knows this. The whole world knows this. Zelenskyy knows this. So the Russians communicated to our team very clearly that they want peace, want to come to the table. There's, you know, we can talk about all these things. We can end this war. They want to end the war too, but they can't do a treaty or anything with a guy who the very next day could be gone. And because we all know, and in fact, I hate to say, people feel the same way about dealing with the United States. You know, you sign something with Biden, a Trump comes in, or vice versa, and everything is flipped. We've seen this multiple times. So they are right to be concerned about who they're dealing with in Kiev. And they have communicated that. So maybe Trump's trying to push him out the door and get these elections going so that by the time they figure out what the deal is, they've got somebody in Kiev or someone in Ukraine who can legitimately have popular support, proven by elections, and can at least commit to it for a term of service.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's more important than ever to have elections while you're in war. I mean, that's when you need elections because the people might not be with you. And those Ukrainians are dead. These are the families are sending their men to die, and they need to have a voice in that. And Zelenskyy has taken that voice away from them.
It's not just that they're dead; they are dead. Families have been destroyed. Many of the women and children are out of the country, but they're also maimed. You know, modern war is with especially drone war. I mean, there's a lot of people not just get killed, but they get injured and they get saved. Okay, they have lost appendages, they've lost their eyesight. Whatever. There's all kinds of things. And many of the men that you would think these will be the ones that survive, they'll rebuild Ukraine. They need help. They're not rebuilding anything. They're trying to survive on one leg or, you know, learn, you know, they've got brain damage. I mean, this is the cost of war. We had the same thing with our guys coming back from Afghanistan and Iraq. You know, they're injured, they're damaged. Ukraine is dealing with something. They need to start with peace immediately, and they need to have help to fix their country, what's left of it. And it's a big thing. Oh, and the other thing that really why Zelenskyy has to go, his core and most loyal support is the neo-Nazis or Ukrainian Nazis, whatever you want to call them, patriots, I don't know. But these folks are the core of Zelensky's support. Part of the objective of the Russian special military operation 3.5 years ago was they were going to denazify Ukraine. Now, Americans didn't understand that. It's like, what? There's no Nazis. What are you talking about? Well, from the Russian perspective, there are. And part of Putin's objective, he holds the military advantage. He's had it from day one in Ukraine. And Putin himself cannot stop unless the Nazis or some effort is made to end this anti-Russian discrimination and this political ideology that wants war in Ukraine against Russia. They don't want war against Poland. They want war against Russia. And Putin has very publicly and very repeatedly emphasized that this is part of what victory has to look like. And I don't think Trump would argue with that. Trump obviously is not going to argue with that. And so Zelenskyy is kind of the hot button for these items. He has to go. They can't have peace unless he's gone. And probably that's why they set him up. And the whole thing, making fun of his clothing when he, his suit or his outfit, we know that that was unnecessary, but he did it at the beginning to really kind of honestly anger Zelenskyy, to show to kind of put him off edge, put him off center, to show his emotionalism and really add to the overall impact that we disrespect this guy, Ukrainians disrespect this guy, Russia disrespects this guy, and Trump disrespects this guy. It's very mean and hateful, but Zelenskyy is not getting the message, but he got it today.
Yeah, I think it's probably an effective tactic on Trump's part. I mean, I'm sure the Europeans are appalled and clutching their pearls and very upset, but what are they going to do? I mean, can Europe continue this war without the United States? Can they back Ukraine?
No, the same thing that we had with sending arms and weapons and munitions, we ran out. We had to open up new production lines, this kind of thing, for the things we were sending. All of the NATO countries that sent stuff into Ukraine did the same thing. They raided their storehouses. They sent a lot of old stuff they didn't want. And then they did send some valuable stuff. And they gave it to, Ukraine didn't pay for this. The governments will have to fund the replacement of all the military capability of the various NATO countries, obviously Germany, France, England, the big ones. But they are in a situation, their economies are bad, their demographics are very depressing. They have an aging population, they have an immigrant population, but isn't really, Europe's immigrant population is not doing high-tech work. It's not like, we've got people coming in to do, to work on computer chips. That's not what the people coming in are doing. They are doing entry-level work in many cases. So it's going to be very hard for the European countries to rebuild their military. They wasted it in Ukraine because, this disease of neoconservatism is not an American thing. We see it here. We have evidence of it here, but it infects the EU. It infects the leadership of many of these NATO countries. And it has driven their militaries and their economies into the ground. And they shot themselves in the foot, of course, we know, with the energy thing. And guess what? Trump is laughing all the way to the bank. And Biden is part of this. I can see Trump saying, yeah, buy all your natural gas from America. We're going to supply the world. We love that. But Biden, this is very undemocratic with a big D Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is not about, let's cause people to stop their cheap energy supplies so that we can charge them more for our energy. That doesn't sound like Biden would say that, but that's exactly what was intended with this. We are the ones. Unfortunately, the United States led the effort to blow up Nord Stream. There's no counter story that makes any sense. We did that. In fact, Biden
Russia did it. Russia blew up their own pipeline. Don't you know? It was there. They totally did it.
Yeah. And in many ways, that kind of speaks to the fundamental relationship that we have with the EU and NATO. We see them as vassals, and we don't use that term, but certainly Russia uses that term. They say, you guys are vassals of the American government. Your NATO is, they tell you what to do. And again, the Nord Stream, that was property owned by Germany, invested by Germany. It was German oil, German gas. Russian gas, but the Germans had paid for it, and we blew that up. And the Germans said nothing.
I don't see how this isn't just like a blaring warning for all of Europe and for Ukraine, for everyone in the world. I don't know how they don't just walk away from this experience and think, wow, okay, the United States, we are all vassal states of the US. Ukraine is a vassal state. Trump very much made that very clear to Zelenskyy today. And Europe is too. Like, we can blow up all your stuff. And what are you going to do? You're not going to retaliate because you're under our control. What do you think the ramifications will be from look, I'm also an anti-war, critic of the military-industrial complex. So from my perspective, this is a good thing overall because the world is no longer going to trust the United States. The world isn't going to go along with our plans anymore because they're going to say, you're going to ditch us like you did Ukraine. And I think that's actually a healthy mentality for everyone in the world to have. They should think about themselves and their own sovereignty, just like we should be thinking about America first. So ultimately, I think it's a good thing. But what do you think? Do you think that there is going to be that sort of reaction moving forward now that they're seeing the undressing of Zelenskyy? I don't know why anybody would ever go with us on any venture ever again in the future.
Yeah, no, that's actually one of the positive impacts of a Trump presidency. He says what he thinks. He doesn't really code it. He doesn't sugarcoat it, and he doesn't lie about America's intentions. He's willing to throw his predecessor under the bus. We don't even see that very often with presidents. They try to be nice to their predecessors, even if they didn't like them. But Trump won't do that, and that is good because it is true. And many countries do sense that America is like a dangerous friend. It's a very dangerous friend. In fact, there's only one country that America, and actually they think that we're a dangerous friend too. I'm speaking of Israel. Israel can rely on us really well, but they are also worried. But the rest of the world sees this. And really what it is, it's a good thing because we're going back to a more of a realism as foreign policy, power politics, but not aggressively so. Respect for other countries' sovereignty, and then we expect that same respect for our sovereignty and our interests. And I think that's a lot. That's kind of what's behind Trump's new Monroe Doctrine, which sounds insane to me. But what he's doing is he is articulating, this is where we care about. So please respect us in this. We're going to change the name of the Gulf of Mexico, but please respect that we care about this part of the world, and we don't care about you do what you do you, and we're going to do us.
Except when it comes to Israel. So let's talk about Israel for a minute.
Israel's a very special case.
Yeah, I wish that Trump would have dressed down Netanyahu in the same way he did to Zelenskyy. Like, why are we not doing the same thing to the number one, the country? We give more money and aid to Israel, and they're committing. I mean, at least Ukraine was defending itself from an invasion from another country. Israel, on the other hand, is just trying to eradicate an entire group of people so they can take all of the land, and we're supporting that.
No, that's exactly what they're doing.
I just wish that he would have done the same exact thing to Netanyahu and said, we're the ones in power. We're the ones who have all the influence. You have to bend to what we want. But I don't know, Karen, maybe that's not true. Maybe Israel is actually the one in charge now. What do you think?
Well, what I think about this, I'm very appalled, and Israel is harming the United States in so many different ways. Certainly the genocide that they've been conducting, and it's not just this one. They talked about, they've been mowing the lawn in Gaza. They call mowing the lawn, let's go bomb a bunch of buildings, kill a bunch of people periodically, just for no reason. They they count calories that are potentially being consumed by Gazans in a very scientific, almost a German Nazi type of way that you would calculate up and figure out, well, we don't want them to grow fat. We want them to not die, but to be really just slightly above starvation. This is all talked about openly in Israel. This is their policy with Gaza and the West Bank. So they are, and the whole world sees it. Many Americans recognize this, but we're tagged because we blindly support Israel. We get the blowback from that. We enable Israel. Guess what? We are just as accountable for the things that they do, even when they totally violate our principles, our shared values as American, our fantasy of what it is to be an American. So we lose a lot. We lose a lot in the global picture. We lose a lot morally and ethically with our relationship to Israel. But here's what I think. Trump is just like he went after USAID with the Doge, right? That was the first target. And then he picked some other targets. And now he's in the DOD. We'll see where that goes. CIA is not off the chopping block. We know that. But he's very careful with the CIA. Very smart to be very careful with the CIA. He's going after Social Security, but there's other things. The Fed, he's looking at the Fed. So there's some of these places are less important than other places. Ukraine is less important than Israel. Trump's strategy with Ukraine, in order to be consistent, can be applied to Israel. Okay? It's not right now going to be, because if Trump tried to dress down Netanyahu like that, I think many in Congress would reveal themselves to be more loyal to Netanyahu than they are to Trump. Well, they do that every day. But so Trump actually has a strategy. I don't know if Trump himself has a strategy, his team has a strategy, because all of his appointments have been the important ones have been over the top Zionist, even Tulsi Gabbard. Okay, so at least overtly.
Yeah.
Why would you do that? Well, I know why I would do that. I don't want Israel on my back right now. So how do I get Israel off my back right now? Because I have other things. I have Ukraine. I have to, financially get ourselves in order. Different things that he wants to do. I want to take over Greenland, whatever. This is just kind of out there. But the real fundamental problem that the United States has is its relationship with Israel. It's our blind support of Israel. It is our co-opting and support of Israel's terrible, not just land grabs, which are illegal, but the genocide that is accompanying them. Israel is one of the richest countries, I think, per capita, richer than Saudi Arabia, richer than Qatar and UAE in that area. It's very wealthy. When they first started Israel, they bought it. They bought land using regular contracts. They bought land, but then that wasn't fast enough. So then they had to displace people. They had the Nabka. So, and then they had this constant war that they engage in against the Palestinians. But there is a way that a real estate guy like Trump could resolve this, and there's a way Israel could resolve it. They could buy the land that they want, secure the land that they want, but they don't prefer to do that. Their idea is that the Palestinians are subhuman. We hate them. They hate us. And so we just want them dead. Well, guess what? Judeo-Christian, they talk a lot in this country, we're founded on Judeo-Christian God. We're founded on Christian values. And Christian values in particular. No, seriously. When I was a kid, it was always Christian values. But then when the movement in the 80s to really political get Republicans and that kind of thing, it was Judeo-Christian. And but it's Christian. And Christian values, which define at least our foundation of this country, don't tolerate genocide. They don't tolerate theft. We have the 10 Commandments. Jews have the 10 Commandments. We do share that. So there has to be a way forward. But I think what has happened is if you've got a sugar daddy, why would you wait? Use the sugar daddy to pay and involve that person. And I hate to say this, but every of the wars, you've been, the Iraq War, the second invasion of Iraq, even the first invasion of Iraq. If you look at our foreign policy, we always like to say over 50, 60 years, well, it's about oil. We say it's about oil. But honestly, it hasn't been about oil. It has been about Israel's interest. And what Israel is interested in as a expanding, very hated country in that region, what they're interested in is putting all their neighbors on a weak footing so that they can do as they wish. It's a small country. I think they have 9 million people. I live in a state of Virginia. We have less than 9 million people. So this is this is a very small place geographically. Yeah. It's a small number of people. They have nuclear weapons, which we still don't talk about to this day. We got problems. But I think Trump recognizes that. And Trump, I hate to call him a bully because I kind of like Trump, but he does exhibit some classic bullying behaviors.
Yeah, and, for sure.
I mean, he does. And Netanyahu is a bully also.
Yeah.
Bullies don't, they don't like say, let's be bully pals together. That's not how it operates. So Netanyahu, of course, is out the door anyway. I mean, he is, as soon as the war ends, and even if not, he's unpopular on shaky grounds legally. There's all kinds of issues. And he's aging in this job. I mean, he's been off and on, I think, the prime minister for over 20 something years, kind of like Putin has been. I think there was a couple of gaps in Netanyahu's terms of service, but he's a bully and he's aggressive and he's arrogant. And these are things that Trump knows how to handle. He really does. And he will not tolerate being pushed around. I think this is another kind of the way where our country is economically. Trump was an attractive candidate for many, many people because people felt pushed around. People felt ignored. And Trump is never ignored. And Trump is never pushed around. And that's kind of it's not just his campaign type thing. It's who he is. And who he is he is the guy to break open and reveal and correct our current relationship with Israel, one that has gone on for really, 40, 50 years.
I mean, it doesn't feel like that's what he's doing, though. I mean, he's sitting there
No.
talking about Trump Gaza, taking Gaza, clearing it out, letting Israel clear out all the people, taking it
Well,
over. He's letting them annex the West Bank and lifting the sanctions on
yes,
the
he is.
settlers.
Well, he is doing that, but it's also like, I see you didn't dress up for the meeting. Oh, I see you're killing all the Gazans. Why don't we clear them out? We'll make a big city. It's almost like there may be possibly a method to his madness. Now,
Yeah.
given the Congress is really the problem. We only have one congressman who doesn't take AIPAC money and doesn't have an AIPAC handler. We know who that is, right? Thomas Massey.
Yeah. Right.
And he is a moral beacon of light, but he doesn't have sway over the decisions that the Congress makes. That would be on any foreign policy issue. That would be Israel. Israel sets America's foreign policy in the Middle East, and we set actually a large part of America's foreign policy. Israel does this. Israel's government has that kind of influence, and it has for a long time. So Trump is facing a big problem, and I think he's trying to get the little problems out of the way so then he can do it. So I don't buy that Trump really truly wants to do a transformation of Gaza and kick out all the Palestinians with no right of return. We'll take their land. We'll set them up in a desert somewhere. I don't really think I don't think that's his plan, but that is Israel's plan. And that is his son-in-law's plan, who lives in Israel.
Yeah.
So, when you kind of talk about what people, I'm innocent. Hey, my brother-in-law was talking to me about his big plan. He's going to go do something crazy. And you say, it's pretty exciting, right? And everybody who hears that goes, oh my God, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. But you're saying it innocently because you're sharing what people are doing. So there's a strategy. Now, we have never seen, Biden didn't do that. And none of our previous presidents, I never saw Obama. Obama like, oh yeah, he was a friend of Israel per se. I mean, Israel controlled our foreign policy under Obama, just as it does under all our presidents. But Obama never, in a companion-like way, shared Israel's vision as Israelis would do in their own country. Yeah. Because their vision is to exactly do what Trump's Gaza plan is, except, they want it cleared out, rebuilt, profitable, and they want no Palestinians there. It's not that they don't want Hamas. They don't want any Palestinians there. They want to take that land. And by talking about it openly and almost speculatively, but also in a positive way, like Trump has done with his Gaza plan, he opens up a large conversation. And certainly this was aimed to some extent to the Arab community to say, look, this could happen. Why don't you step up? Let's fix this problem.
I kind of wonder if he's talking like this. Yeah, I mean, one thing that is, the one truth is the killing is stopped. I mean, that's just the reality of it. Trump has been able to stop the killing of Palestinians and Palestinian children. And that is, that can't be like, yeah, I mean, there's still, but it's, the massive bombings that we were seeing, the genocide that we were watching in real time has stopped. And that is a big accomplishment. And so part of me wonders, and what I know from what he's said many times is he just doesn't like seeing dead people. He doesn't like death. He wants killing to stop. And he said that about Ukraine. He's done it in Israel and in Palestine. So part of me wonders if he just kind of does this kind of show for the Israelis so that they just calm down and they just continue on not killing. Like, hey, I'm your friend. I gotcha. We're going to take over Gaza. There's no way he's going to take over Gaza and rebuild it in the 4 years that he's president. It's just not going to happen. Not at all. Even if he thinks, even if he's genuine about that plan, it's just not realistic in the time that he's president. So I think he knows all of that, but he's just saying, look, like I've got the killing stopped for now. And and this buys time to come up with an actual solution and to get the Arabs, rear ends in gear of like, come up with something because otherwise we're just going to take it.
That's true. I think if you want to understand how Israel perceives their situation, you have to look at how AIPAC is operating. And of course you look at how Israel's leaders are operating. And I don't think, my opinion, this is just my opinion, maybe it's worthless. I don't know. But my opinion is that Israel's a little bit worried about Trump, partly because he's Trump and you can't predict everything that he's going to do. And the reason I say this is because AIPAC is completely insanely going after the appointment of Eldridge Colby. He is an upcoming appointed guy working in DOD. And the thing that he's going to be working on is the Middle East policy. Eldridge Colby is the son of a former CIA director, Colby, who died in a canoe, very strangely, and after he retired. Have you heard of him?
I haven't. I'm going to look this up.
Okay. Anyway, Eldridge is his grandson. I said son. I'm wrong about that. He is his grandson, and he has served in previous governments before. He's a very normal-looking guy, but he's highly respected, and he's not pro-Israel. He is pro-peace, like Trump is pro-peace, but he's way more. He's an administrator. He's a strategist. He's a smart guy, and they're going to put him in a place. The position he's up for to be that the Congress has to approve is putting him in a place where he will shape Middle East policy. And AIPAC is having conniption fits about this, and they are working Congress and the Senate hard, particularly the Senate. And guys who supported, some of the neocons like Tom Cotton, some of these other people who are totally reliable for Israel and did eventually come on board for Tulsi Gabbard and some of these other appointments that were a little, and RFK Jr., right? I mean, RFK Jr., he's a great Zionist. It's not his area of concern, but he's going to break the system. And they're afraid the Congress, it doesn't want that. So, but these guys the senators came on board for these candidates, but they are not coming on board for Eldridge Colby. And their phone lines are being worked hard by AIPAC. AIPAC does not want to see him there. Now, why? If they trust Trump so much, why do they care what the third, he's a second tier under Hegseth, I think, second or third. He's not a top level guy. He's not going to be somebody who gives press conferences or anything like that. He's going to be working kind of nuts and bolts on Middle East policy. And AIPAC despises him. They are extremely worried about him. And I don't know why. They shouldn't be, but they are. Okay. And that's why I think that Trump has a strategy that really will be putting America first. And if nothing else, not that we can't be friends with Israel, certainly we can be, but not equal friends. Right. Kind of like the Zelenskyy treatment. And this goes back to what you're saying. I'd like to see him treat Netanyahu and give him that, the Zelenskyy treatment. Certainly Netanyahu deserves it, but it may be coming. It may be coming. And so watch how happy or unhappy AIPAC is. And they are not as happy. I'll just say this right straight up. AIPAC is not as happy as they should be. They are not as grateful for Trump as they should be. Why is that? Because I think they understand. He potentially is, if any president can do something about Israel, it will be Trump.
Let's hope. We just have to cut that tie. And like you said, it doesn't mean we're not allies or friends, just like we are with the UK. I mean, we can have that sort of relationship with Israel, and I'm not opposed to that necessarily, depending on their behavior. But like if they do legitimately get invaded, if they're really truly under attack by Iran or something, or the Saudis decide to just, wildly decide to invade the place. I mean, I'm not against us being allies and saying, we'll help you out, right? I mean, I think that's fair enough. Yeah. We would do that for other allies, potentially, just depending on what the situation is. But they've just got us. I mean, they own us. They completely own us. Yeah. And it's of utmost, I think, importance for the security of our nation to cut that tie somehow. And I'm hoping Trump does that. That would be great. That would be a massive accomplishment.
It would be huge. Yeah, it would be a major change, and it's a necessary change if we really want to fix our country, help our country grow, be a peaceful and prosperous country. We cannot be led around by the nose by Israel's behavior and Israel's dreams. But here's you started with the video with Trump and JD Vance. JD Vance, and I just thought of this as you're saying this, but JD Vance pointed out that Zelenskyy campaigned with the opposition during the campaign, which he did. Zelenskyy campaigned for the Democrats or attended a uh, Harris event or something like that.
Sure.
And advocated for that. It makes sense, obviously. They were his money supply, and it makes sense. But JD Vance, that's very obscure. Okay, who knew that? Only the geeks that follow politics constantly know that. Yet he brought it up, and I think that is a small line in the sand for Israel, who elects pretty much every member of the House of Representatives and probably every senator, is not elected without some support from AIPAC. And if they do the wrong thing, AIPAC heavily funds, and this is in the news, obviously, heavily funds primaries. In fact, successfully AIPAC primaried several folks who weren't pro-Israel enough. So for JD Vance they could be practicing on Zelensky. We may not see Netanyahu treated like this in the coming year or two, but it's possible that it will happen, because it seems like they are using the right language.
Well, Netanyahu did what Trump wanted. I mean, a big difference between Zelensky and Netanyahu is not Netanyahu did it. I mean, Trump said, ceasefire, come up with a deal. And they did. And it's holding right now. And I think that as long as that continues, I don't think Trump feels the need to dress down Netanyahu in the same way that he did Zelensky. But if Netanyahu just decided to start bombing again and totally went back on the ceasefire deal, then maybe Trump would say, hey, listen, buddy, like, we're not going to give you anything anymore if you're going to do this.
That's right. And there is a little test, a pop quiz coming up here soon, because Israel is refusing to leave the Philadelphia corridor, which is between Egypt and it's Egypt and Gaza. And they normally militarize that, and they have troops there. The ceasefire called for them to vacate that. And that would allow Egypt and other countries to bring in aid and that kind of thing through that to the Gazans, to rebuild, to feed them, to take care of their health needs and that kind of thing. Netanyahu publicly said just this week he is not leaving that corridor because he doesn't want Hamas to start smuggling. That is a direct violation of the ceasefire. It's not the only one Israel has done, but it's a pretty significant one, because the ceasefire called for them to vacate. They vacated the Netzarim corridor that they had set up. They did bring the IDF away from that, but they have them still at the border between Egypt and Gaza. That is a direct 100% contradiction of what they signed up to, what Netanyahu signed up to. Yeah. So if he continues with that and they begin killing more Gazans again, we'll see how Trump responds to that, because it's ugly for us, and we need a president who will do the right thing. And Trump knows what the right thing is, because he did that ceasefire even before he was inaugurated. He had these people over there saying, we're not going to put up with it. And Netanyahu, did that. But the other problem with Israel is, they're very complex politics at home. It's not like they have one party that wants to kill Gazans. They have many parties who oppose each other on many things, and they generally all agree that we have to kill Gazans. Yeah. We have to kill Palestinians. It is something that I don't think Americans really get. It's not our country, and they can do what they want. But if they're going to run our politics, we do need to understand Israel a little bit better than we do. We're shielded from many of the unsavory aspects of Israeli domestic politics.
Yeah, I think people are starting to see more and more of that, though. I will say, the sentiment is shifting towards Israel. Even people, I'm from the state of Idaho, very conservative state, Republicans. A lot of people there are like, I stand with Israel, and they don't even know why they do. They just do. But I will say that lately, and I'm talking about boomers, old boomer guys sitting at the bar, and lately even they will say, they kind of caveat their support for Israel. They'll say, oh, I support Israel, but, and then they kind of do this but, and we never heard that before. We never heard the but before. Oh. But this, I think they're going too far. This is like, I don't like what I'm seeing. They're kind of given this, they'll couch that statement of I support Israel. And that's a whole different shift that's we amazing. Have not seen.
Yeah. And if you've got boomers and older, mature Americans saying that, or rethinking it a little bit, because the younger generations are lost to Israel. Even American Jews, the younger ones, they're not even interested in doing what their parents did. They don't want to work in the IDF. They might take a vacation there, but they really don't want to serve that. They aren't. AIPAC is having a hard time recruiting believers in AIPAC.
Yeah.
They obviously you can pay whoever you want to lobby, but they're not. The younger crowd is rejecting it. And it's funny because a lot of the Trump people, they don't like DEI. They don't like a soft-hearted approach that everyone has rights. But we've been raised on this in America. The younger generations have been actually soaked in this through the schools and colleges. And that makes somebody, if that's how you believe and everyone around you believes this way, you cannot tolerate a genocide.
Right.
You can't pay for a genocide. It is so inconsistent, it cannot be tolerated. So that's just, our society is doing better, not necessarily because anybody wanted us to do better, but our young people do not agree with
right.
And many young Israelis and many young Jews around the planet do not agree with what
Right.
Israel's government is doing. So there's lots of there's lots of things that can lead to change which have nothing to do with Donald Trump. They have to do with the world, the fact that the
Right.
world is connected, the fact that I think people around the world do have a good heart. Americans have good hearts. So all this works against Zionist Israel, unfortunately for them. And I think we'll see some change. And I think Trump will be I think he will be a powerful force to shake some of this loose. Certainly we got nothing from the previous presidents. None of them have even done anything other than agree to whatever Israel asked us to do. And I think Trump is, if he does it, he will be a great president. I'll tell you that right now. If he does that, that will be, for somebody my age, he will have done the impossible. So I'm hoping, I wish him luck.
I hope so too. Retired Lieutenant Colonel Karen Katowski, former U.S. Air Force officer. Thank you so much for joining us. Where can people find your work? I know you do a lot of writing. You do a lot of corresponding as well. Where can people find you?
Yeah, I write about once a week. I have a Substack. I send it to Lou Rockwell. That's where it goes first. And also judgenap.com. I'm a regular on the Judge Napolitano show on Tuesdays at 3. So
great. He's great.
He publishes the articles, or I publish them, I guess. So for whatever they're worth, my opinion of, and a lot of it is really foreign policy. Every once in a while domestic stuff, but usually when I write domestic stuff, it's a humorous piece. When I write foreign policy, it's more serious.
Yeah. Well, I mean, foreign policy is a big thing. That's America's, that's our export, right? We just go around and export our military, export our might, and we use it to bully. And I mean, it's a big piece of who we are, unfortunately. So I think until that changes, there's going to still be a lot to say. So,
yeah, for sure. I mean, it would be nice that if we could just make fun of the rest of the world in a humorous, fun, friendly kind of way, but we can't because we are messing with too many people. But Trump, I think, gets that our economy is unbalanced. Our biggest export is not energy. Every once in a while, energy exceeds it, but usually our biggest export is military-industrial complex type products, and that's not healthy for any nation to do because that means that you need war to continue to pimp your economy. And we don't need war. We need peace and we need freedom and liberty. War is the enemy of all those things. So we have to have peace, and we should not be depending on our prosperity by causing other people to kill each other, like we see around the world. And certainly Ukraine was a prime example. Why don't you and him fight and we'll profit from it? That is not good. And if you had it on a ballot, not a single American would vote for that, which is comforting to know. If you ask the people in this country, should we go and foment war around the world because we'll profit from it? They would say, no, let's find a better way. So,
Lieutenant Colonel Karen Katowski, thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you so much for having me.